Did you know that the biggest movie franchise of the 20th century was originally predicted to be a box office flop? Star Wars is now a multi billion-dollar franchise and has hundreds of millions of fans worldwide. I myself am a fan, and I have seen all of the movies and read many of the comics. I am also credible on this source because I have read many articles about how Star Wars became a major success. George Lucas was able to obtain the funding for Star Wars and his dream project and brought it to the big screen in 1977. He was able to get the funding for Star Wars through his passion and dedication for the project, his smart business deals, and his use of traditional storytelling. Lucas's perseverance and vision for a new type of story is one aspect that made Star Wars a major hit. However, Lucas's passion wasn't always filmmaking, and it was initially automobile racing, which he participated in often after high school. However, he got into a serious car accident in 1962, and this caused him to decide to switch his main passion to filmmaking. After Lucas's recovery, he began to pursue film school at the University of Southern California, where he learned his initial training for filmmaking. In the years following his graduation, Lucas would come to direct his first big film, American Graffiti, in 1973. This film retold his livelihood as a teenager driving his car around the 1950s streets. The small budget film was a major success and grossed more than $115 million. After this success, many film companies were seeking out George Lucas, this young director. However, George Lucas instead began to write his Star Wars drafts in 1973 following American Graffiti. However, these first couple drafts were hard to follow and lacked a clear vision, leading to many film companies rejecting his initial scripts, such as United Artists and Universal. Even George Lucas's co-writer for Star Wars at the time, Gary Kurtz, called the initial drafts gobbledygook. George Lucas's perseverance and the help he received from his friend Gary Kurtz allowed George to feel confident enough to bring his project in front of 20th Century Fox in 1975. He struck a deal with Fox for an initial budget of $11 million. It went through many revisions still, and continued revisions up until 2 months before filming in 1976. For example, one revision was Luke Skywalker, known now as a Jedi Knight, was originally known as Anakin Starkiller Jedi Bendu. The movie was not an initial success, as it was only released to select theaters at first. However, as word spread and the fire began to grow underneath of it, Star Wars began to grow very popular through 1977 and 1978. By the end of its run, it grew to have 70 times the amount of budget in the box office. The second reason Star Wars was such a success was because of George Lucas's use of traditional storytelling tropes in the film. He did this so that the film could apply to all ages. It took inspiration from old methodology and stories and TV shows from his childhood. Originally, he wanted to make a remake of Flash Gordon, a TV show from the 1950s. However, the plan changed when he couldn't grab the rights to make the movie. He instead switched the militaristic type of Flash Gordon to a more romanticized version, which would focus on human nature and the common man. Lucas then began looking at Eastern religious philosophies, and for this reason, Star Wars has always been appealing. As George Lucas has said, its thousand-year psychological motifs and underpinnings of humanity are one big major reason for its success. He used themes from Japanese films such as The Hidden Fortress, and he designed the Darth Vader's helmet on a traditional samurai helmet. He based many ideas of the light and the dark side of the Force off the balance of the light and the dark of the yin and the yang. He sought advice from Joseph Campbell, his friend and mentor, who taught him traditional good and evil methodology. George Lucas also read Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Lucas used his studies of Japanese films, Eastern religious philosophies, and his help from Joseph Campbell to make his own methodology in Star Wars. The third reason that Star Wars was such a major success was George Lucas's ability to make smart business deals with these film companies that doubted his vision. Lucas saw many film studios as only wanting to be profit only and would take little chance on something unique. So he showed Star Wars to his friend Alan Ladd Jr., who he had met in film school. Alan Ladd Jr. was the son of Alan Ladd, a famous actor. so Alan Ladd Jr. naturally had a natural interest in filmmaking. 10 days after showing the script to Alan Ladd Jr., Lucas struck a deal with 20th Century Fox. However, he was only given a small sum of $15,000 for the script and $50,000 to write the movie. Despite striking this deal, 20th Century Fox executives still doubted Star Wars and considered it to be a possible box office flop. They had so little faith in the movie, actually, that they ceded the rights to merchandising to George Lucas for $500,000 of his directorial paycheck. After getting this deal, Lucas struck a deal with Kenner Products and began producing 3 3/4-inch products for Star Wars in 1976. The toys were such a major success that they grossed in over $100 million. Lucas regained the merchandising rights in 1991 and then began to continue making Star Wars films in 1999 with the prequels. George Lucas's dealings with Fox and Kenner Products are the major reason that Star Wars was able to come to the big screen. Lucas's passion is the sole reason that Star Wars drafts made it past its initial trials and tribulations. The film was only budgeted $11 million, but came to gross $775 million. Lucasfilm was sold to Disney for $4 billion in 2012. George Lucas is now worth $6.4 billion himself, and Star Wars as a whole is valued just over $70 billion. It continues with shows such as the sequels and The Mandalorian. Without Lucas's dedication, love of traditional stories and movies, and his willingness to sacrifice, Star Wars would have never been a reality.